Welcome to day 128 of 66 and 26. We're back in the book of 2 Samuel today in the Old Testament. This part of 2 Samuel, I think, represents one of the most tragic stories of all of the Bible because of the fall of King David. David has such amazing potential. He is a man after God's own heart. God has given him a promise that his dynasty will last forever, that his descendants will never cease to be king. And the line of David continues on through the Messiah, Jesus, who is born from the family of David. Really great things happening for David. And then into the chapters of today, chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 10, we see David's successes and his victories over the enemies, rallying Israel together, expanding the borders of Israel, and even showing grace to the family of Saul. Saul, you might remember, was the first king of Israel, and his family line was continued on after his death, but there was a lot of opposition between Saul and David, so David could have a heart of vengeance towards Saul's family, but instead he shows amazing grace to Mephibosheth and others in Saul's line. And then comes the tragedy, and that is in 2 Samuel chapter 11, and a very familiar story that many people know, and that is the story of David and Bathsheba. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. Now, the problem is, in those days, the king was expected actually to be with his army. He led the army in battle, but David did not go with his army. David stayed in Jerusalem, and that's when he got in trouble. Because one night, as all the men are gone, there is a woman, Bathsheba, who is washing in a pool on the rooftop nearby, and he sees her, lusts after her, and then invites her into his home where he sleeps with her, impregnates her, and then David tries to cover that up by bringing her husband Uriah back from battle so that he can have relations with his wife, and then David would get away with this, thinking, oh, Uriah must think that this child is his own child by Bathsheba. But Uriah refuses to have relations with his wife, even to go into his own house, because in solidarity with his men, he stays outside and he does not want to enjoy any of the pleasures of life back home. And so David resorts to an extreme, and that is sending word to the general Joab at the front line of battle, send Uriah to the front line and then retreat all the troops so that Uriah will fall. And that's what happens. And we see this just tragic story of David's fall into extreme sin, adultery, then lying, and then murder. And then Nathan, the prophet, we see in 2 Samuel 12, confronts David with the reality of his sin, and David is broken, and he will never be the same. We'll see throughout the rest of 2 Samuel, throughout the remainder of David's life, that he continues to be plagued by the sorrow that comes from his own sin and the death of his firstborn son, which comes as a result of that sin as well. This is a story that reminds us that no earthly king is truly our salvation. Even the greatest king in all Israel's history, King David, is a broken, fallen man. And we realize that we don't need a human savior. We need a God-human savior, and that is Jesus. And we wait for him and his story to come through the line, even the broken line of David.